Water of the pond, a human mind, very similar to each other, whether it's muddy or clear, never settled, but keeps changing. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Greetings, and thank you for joining in today's Shōshinge service. I think that Shinran Shōshinge is just truly a remarkable exposition of our Pure Land teachings. In it, he first pays homage to Amida Buddha, then he expresses his adoration to both Amida and Shakyamuni Buddha, also known as Gautama, the historical Buddha. And then he explains the core teachings of the 7 root teachers of Jodo Shinshu, as selected by Shinran himself. The last of these root teachers is Honen, also known as Genku. And Honen was actually a direct teacher of Shinran's during his lifetime. Honen became a Tendai monk at an early age, but grew disaffected with the life on Mount Hiei, and so he left it, seeking an approach to Buddhism that anyone could follow, even during the perceived age of Dharma decline, Mappo. After discovering the writings of Chinese Buddhist master Shandao, Honen undertook the teachings of rebirth in Amida's Pure Land through the recitation of the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu. During Shinran's lifetime, Honen was known as one of the most respected of priests. Even after leaving Mount Hiei, he kept his strict monastic vows and continued to study and teach. And yet, Honen continued to see himself as an ordinary man who was more or less the same with other people, struggling with their blind passions. Honen's lifelong search for spiritual illumination and enlightenment led him through an exhaustive journey into the Buddhist teachings. It's said that he had read the entire Buddhist canon and had also read all the writings of Shandao multiple times. Given all that, he chose the Pure Land path, taking refuge in Amida Buddha, the Buddha of infinite life, the Tathagata of unimpeded light, pervading the 10 quarters. Honen made the pioneering move of establishing the exclusive practice of the recited Nembutsu, Senju Nembutsu. And this sparked a revolution in Buddhist practice in Japan, which led to the popularization of Buddhism among the masses, among everyday people, people in all walks of life. And this included women, who were often excluded. And it was this teacher who inspired and influenced his student Shinran, our own founder of Jodo Shinshu. Honen was not a poet per se, but because of his culture, which expressed thoughts through poetry, Honen did write short verses from time to time. And one of my favorite poems of his is known as the Water Pond poem. Honen writes, "Water of the pond, a human mind, very similar to each other, whether it's muddy or clear, never settled, but keeps changing. Namanda, Namanda." In this short verse, Honen's observing that the color of the water in the pond is sometimes clear and sometimes muddy. It's always changing and uncontrollable because the causes and conditions affecting it, rain, wind, sun, water levels, activity within the pond, sediment settled on the bottom of the pond, and so many other causes affect it constantly, changing the conditions. And Honen, by looking at the pond, reflected on how this is very similar to our own minds. Our mind is sometimes clear and sometimes not. Sometimes we're impatient, sometimes we're angry, and sometimes we're upset that things don't go our way. Our delusion is that we think we're pure in thoughts, that we're seeing exactly as things appear as they are, without bias, without judgment, without preferences clouding our perspective. Just like water in the pond becomes muddy so easily right after a hard rain, our mind too can easily become impure when attachment or aversion is involved. I find that this beautiful verse of Honen tells us how well he understood the human condition. Just like the water in the pond, our human nature cannot be fixed, unchanging. And because of this realization, Honen was able to encounter the primal vow of Amida Buddha and realize the mind, which is always changing and full of kleshas, mental obscurations of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, that this mind is not an issue in order to attain birth in the ultimate land of bliss. And this is exactly what Honen's student Shinran understood. Shinran wrote in a collection of passages revealing the true practice of the Pure Land Way, quote, "The great practice is to say the name of the Tathagata of an unhindered light. This practice, embodying all good acts and possessing all roots of virtue, is perfect and most rapid in bringing about birth. It is the treasure ocean of virtues that is suchness, or true reality. For this reason, it is called great practice." Shinran continues, "This practice arises from the vow of great compassion, which is known as the vow that all Buddhas extol the name, the vow that all Buddhas say the name, and the vow that all Buddhas praise the name. It might also be called the vow of directing virtue for our going forth, and the vow in which the saying of the name is selected. Namanda, Namanda." So this vow of compassion is given to us, and all we have to do is hear it. According to the late Reverend Taitetsu Uno, quote, "Deep hearing enables us to awaken to the name that calls, the boundless compassion that sustains all of life. Through entrusting, the practice of the recitative Nembutsu is begun. The daily intoning of I entrust myself to Amida Buddha. Out of this devotion grows the realization that the true self is a manifestation of Dharma, or reality as it is," close quote. I've observed in others how this devotion and entrusting results in the unfolding of humility, compassion, and generosity. I think saying the Nembutsu is a transformative practice, one that we receive, not one we achieve. True entrusting allows the wondrous light of great love and great compassion to burst into our very heart and mind. I'd like to close with a reflection from Shinran. Those who deeply entrust themselves to Amida's vow of great compassion should all say Namo Amida Butsu constantly, whether they are waking or sleeping. Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namandots, Namandots.